Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan. And I know this is an Eagles podcast, but how about those Philadelphia Phillies, Adam Caplan? How about them fightings, man?
I have to tell you, this reminds, for those of you who are native Philadelphians, I'm old enough to remember the 1985 Villanova National Championship team, which barely got in the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
If you recall, those who went to Nova, who were there then, or alumni, or just love the program, they had a very bad run late in the season, where there were some questions where they make the tournament, and they got in, and they had a run. Look, they ran the table, won whatever it was, 6 games, something like that, and won the tournament. Well, and everyone got, if you look at that, Ed Pinckney, Plansky, I remember a lot of this stuff, like it just happened. Obviously, Gary McLean.
Right.
But everything has to go right. Now, obviously, Bryce Harper, who really struggled to come off his injuries, it's been unbelievable.
Listen, man, Reese is the starter because he always starts it, and then Rice comes in and finishes it, man.
And where's Hoskins? Like, Reese had this really bad slump.
Uh-huh.
And now he's on fire. And the pitching has been, obviously, the 2 starters, and then Ranger came in and get the save in the final game on Sunday. You just can't make it up. The crowd's out of their minds, and it seemed like everyone I know is going except me, you, and I.
Yeah, I know. Well, I had a great weekend myself. I was able to watch pieces of the game, most of them, listen to them on the ride back. But I was up in Happy Valley for the weekend for the Eagles bye weekend. I was at the whiteout game. It was such a great experience. Awesome. I haven't been back in over 10 years. So finally my kids got to go to a game. We tailgated all day. It was a freaking phenomenal experience, especially because it was the whiteout game. And honestly, I was nervous about Minnesota because Penn State's been struggling the last 2 years with teams that can line it up and run on them. And they have a great running game, and Mo Ibrahim, and he got his 100 yards, but I mean, he really didn't hurt Penn State. And we took off in the second half, and it was just unbelievable. Night game, 108,000 people. My kids enjoyed it. My wife enjoyed it. It was really good to be back. What a great weekend.
I've never been to a game there. I've been to the school, but I've never been to a game there. It's crazy.
Oh, Adam, we got to go,
I
man.
know.
It's phenomenal.
I'll do it. Look, if they get a real quarterback, I'll do it.
Hey, next year. Drew Aller.
Yeah.
Number 1 quarterback recruit in the country. Next year. He's their backup.
Oh, they have the number 1 recruit? What's his name?
Yeah. In fact, it's kind of unfortunate because, I'm a fan. Of course, you always want that guy to be the guy, but you hear a little bit too much from the Nittany Lions fans. Like, as soon as Clifford has a bad tooth passes, it's play Drew Aller. I saw somebody walking around with a Drew Aller Penn State jersey, and I'm like, you're wearing the backup quarterback's jersey. This isn't like wearing Nick Foles' jersey because he won a Super Bowl.
Right.
You're literally wearing the backup jersey of a college football player. That's almost unheard of. But well,
now with NIL, kids are making money. Yeah, kids are making a couple million. It's insane.
But you met Nick Singleton at the Maxwell Awards with when we went last year. He's the Penn State running back who was the Gatorade Player of the Year. He's already doing some really good things there. So next year and the year after could be amazing years if they don't screw it up, if you know what I'm saying. So it was a great weekend, awesome time. Looking forward now to the Phillies in the World Series. The Eagles coming out of the bye 6-0. We're going to talk a lot about their opponents coming up on the schedule, see who, if anybody, will be a real test for them. I wonder at what point do you think, how many more wins in a row do they have to have, or just wins, before the whole Trey Thomas has been sounding the undefeated drum since week 2, but before people get into a little bit of a frenzy there about the schedule works. I thought, Adam, the Packers and Colts would have sort of figured out their ills by now. And I know the Colts won 2 weeks ago, but they weren't so good. I mean, they're not they don't look very competitive.
No, they're struggling.
They lost to Tennessee, and then the Packers are just not getting it together. So I don't know.
Well, we'll go inside the Eagles division. This show is an inside only as we go inside the division and inside these opponents, as you're talking about.
I love that you got intel on this too. It's going to be great.
Yeah. So I had, because the Eagles were on a bye, I called some friends with teams on Friday and talked to some guys after other meetings on Saturday. So I've got a lot of information because I know the one thing we've learned, this is our 5th year doing the show. I know maybe some fans don't watch the entire league, but they want to know what's going on in the NFC East. So we're going to get into that in a minute.
Yep.
And, our last Patreon for our Patreon subscribers, was an awesome sort of chalk talk with Paul Gunther and former Raiders and Bengals D coordinators from this area. And I love, he really knows the Eagles team. Like, I was kind of shocked. Like, he kind of knows it like the back of his hand. Now, one thing he didn't talk about, apparently he's got very good relationships in the building. And I think he talks to people, and he clearly knows the roster very well.
Definitely worth checking out our interview with Paul Gunther. We, once again, just like last month when we did the one with John DiFilippo, I put out a few promotional videos of it, and people were like, wow, I have to go see that. And same thing with Paul Gunther. I put out a clip. We got a slew of more subscribers to the channel, I think, just to check those interviews out. So we really recommend it. Patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. Sign up, become a subscriber. Lots of great bonus exclusive content, including this Chalk Talk series that we're doing. We've now had an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator. Next up, probably a head coach. Former NFL head coach.
Yep, the former NFL coach. We got a couple in mind. And then every Wednesday through the playoffs, yes, Eagles will be a playoff team at some point. This actually, technically, they'll be playing in January. We will do a chat every Wednesday on Discord. We have our Discord channel. It's so easy when you become a Patreon subscriber. You get that as part of your subscription.
Right.
And the other thing we're doing, I know it's you do it and I do it. We may be on that channel during a game, Sunday night game, a Monday night game. It doesn't have to be the Eagles related. I know people were going out of their mind on the Phillies. It was cool. Like the
fantasy football. There's a fantasy football channel on the Inside the Birds one too.
I got to check that out. I lost Breece Hall on Sunday, unfortunately, and I have him. I'm in 7 leagues. I've been 4 of them. So that's painful. You're not going to lose your league because you lose one player, but he's been doing so well, it's going to be painful.
Yeah, so, I agree with you. You're going to lose your league, by the way, if you drafted Trey Lance as your quarterback, Jameis Winston as your backup, and if your top 2 receivers were Keenan Allen and Mike Evans. Oh, that's me.
That's me. That's the NFC. By the way, you mentioned the Bucs. We'll talk about them in a couple minutes. Boy, it is amazing, and I know the NFL loves the competitive balance, as they call it, which they've been calling it to me for a couple of decades. But is it really good when Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers aren't doing well? I don't think it's good for the league, but maybe that's just me.
No, and then Matt Ryan's not doing well either. I mean, all the guys who like you said, you're kind of used to, even at their worst, being pretty good. It's just not that good. And right now the league is very, very average. I would say very average.
It's really weird. Matt Ryan, right, 2 weeks ago, unbelievable. 58 pass attempts.
Yep.
They won with a spread because of Jonathan Taylor coming back. Well, they continued it on Sunday at the Titans. They were terrible. They didn't feature Jonathan Taylor. And they got too pass happy. They weren't in a rhythm. In fact, Paris Campbell, of all people, had a career game and led them in receiving, which is a nice story. He was the guy who was taken ahead of Terry McLaurin, but that's not what you want. Jonathan Taylor looked fine. They're going to lose that division. Tennessee's going to win it with smoke and mirrors. They have so little talent. This is the league. This is the league this year. And I don't want to downplay the Jets' achievement. They're 5-2, which is amazing to me, considering how young they are. But so many teams where you thought, okay, maybe they can compete. They're not going to win anything. These teams are winning. This is not the way the league's supposed to be. It's crazy.
Yep. Oh, by the way, throw Russell Wilson into that mix of Brady and Rodgers and other quarterbacks not playing well. So I'll say this: after, I think you can agree that the 3 best quarterbacks, the guys playing at the highest level right now, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. Okay, those are your 3. I mean, however you want to slice
Geno
it.
Geno Smith.
I was just about. That's why I was setting this up, Adam. I was about to say you can make an argument that the 4th best quarterback in the NFL this year has either been Geno Smith or Dak was hurt for a lot, but he came back and threw. But either way, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, and Dak Prescott in that era. Oh, Joe Burrow has kind of come back to life.
He's really come back. He's on absolute fire.
Right.
No, Dak has barely played, so they didn't even count him.
That's true.
On our list of guys who actually, and by the way, Herbert's not playing well. It's not the ribs. He wasn't even on the injury report this last week. This has been the strangest year I could remember because games are obviously close. Scoring is way down, although this past Sunday there were a lot of high-scoring games.
Yep.
It's really and then the Panthers. They're not tanking.
They don't even know how to tank right.
Well, what they're doing is they were probably going to move on from McCaffrey anyway. They were never going to come. They were going to probably trade him anyway after the season. Have they not traded him now? So they moved him now, got a bunch of draft picks, took a big cap hit. But it's just remarkable to me. I don't think, quite frankly, I don't think you're really out of a playoff spot. Now, other than a couple teams, you could still push for a wild card if you get hot. Because let me run before we get started breaking this down and going inside the NFC East.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see? Would you call the Eagles a dominant team?
Yes.
Why? How are they dominant?
I get why you would question it, because it's not like they're winning every game by 20 to 25 points, but the way they've dominated on both, they have top five offense and defense. They are top 3 or number 1 in I haven't checked since all the weekend stuff, but in time of possession, there are top 5 in both third down and red zone defense. Last I had checked, so they don't have to beat every team by 20. The point is that they're undefeated, and there's not been a single game where you felt the other team had control of that game or would win, right? Like, not at one point this year have you felt the Eagles, when after the game started, were in danger of losing a game.
That's fair. Oh, the other thing is, this is another point stat on time possession, total offensive plays per game. Mm-hmm. They were number 1, and for a bit, I'm assuming, again, through Sunday's games, I'm not, because they didn't play this past week, but average plays per game on offense, they're right there. They're dominant just about every stat. Now, I know the detractors will say, well, look who they played. I get that, but they don't control their schedule. You can only do as well as you can. And the only thing is, because we talked about this, we really, Geoff and I really enjoyed doing the sort of breakdown, the Eagles Self Scout. Some great comments. See, it's funny. People seem to agree with us on our YouTube channel. Their comments, we all see the same thing. They got to close better. Certain things could be a little bit better. Shot plays, we want to see more shot plays, because they start off the season going really deep, and lately they haven't done a lot of it. But it's not nitpicking. It's just what you see and what you know, and what you're told, and they know this. They, in their self scout, they're looking at things that you can tell that they need to be improved. But that's the best part about it, because when I talked to John D. Flippo last week, the key point that he gave me was that you get the analytical data and you kind of know this, but you're game planning for the opponent because you have a game that particular week. And then once you get to the bye, you go, okay, let's dig into this. Let's really figure this out. And that's whatever data they have, whatever, and plus the tape. And the second half, not collapses, but where the other team's coming back on them, they could see what they're not doing well. Are they too soft on defense? Why don't they have energy on offense in the second half? That's stuff that they can control.
Yes.
By the way.
There's only one important statistic, where the Eagles are really bad, and it's kind of baffling because it's not consistent with the rest of them. But in third down defense, they are the 3rd worst in the NFL as far as stop percentage on third down. That's baffling to me. But they have so many takeaways, which many of them happen on first and second, that they compensate. So I mean, I suppose when they play a more careful team that can control the ball, and I don't know who that is, we'll get into that when we talk about some of the remaining teams, maybe that'll come back and hurt them a little bit. But again, it's such an outlier for all their other, I mean, if you're the 3rd worst, or if you're one of the worst defenses on third down, you're a bad defense, because that's an important down in the NFL, obviously. But the Eagles are a good defense, and every other metric is good. They're a top 4th down defense. They're I think 6th overall in scoring defense and 4th in yards. So it's just to me, it's a little bit flukish. So you look for context and stats, right? So the context leads me to believe that that's a little bit flukish, maybe weighted by 1 or 2 games, or when in the second half when they're up a decent and you're playing a softer coverage, and you don't mind that the team's converting 3rd and 3 because they're just wasting time off the clock trying to matriculate the ball down the field. To me, that's how I see that stat.
Well, also second half when the Eagles are up big, they're playing soft coverage.
That's what I said.
And that's going to kill the numbers,
right?
And then, obviously you had the Detroit game where Detroit almost shocked them. Obviously, that was a weird game. The thing is, when you're so far ahead in every game, you're in the second half, you're playing soft coverage because you're playing not to get beat over the top. Right. So you'll give up third downs. You just want them to use clock. So I understand that. But it's interesting. The NFC East, I'm in complete awe of what the Giants are doing. It's really remarkable. And having talked to a couple of people close to the situation, they kind of know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And they won't come out and say they're overachieving, but we can. They are overachieving. We'll talk about them in a second.
Sure.
Washington had a thorough win against Green Bay. It's unbelievable how bad Green Bay's offense is.
Mm-hmm.
At some point you expect the Packers to break out and get their offense going, but it hasn't happened at all.
Right.
And when you look at Dallas, boy, they did not look good passing football. They ran it well. We'll talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the Kings of the NFL right now, the only undefeated team. And they're really, the Eagles are the only team, this is what we were just talking about a couple minutes ago, that mostly dominant every game, where you never felt, as you said, and it's probably the best point of all of this, you never really felt that they were challenged to lose.
Right.
A couple of hairy moments where they got to get things going, they get going, and that's it.
Yep.
Just, it's only 6 games. Yes, they've had a favorable schedule, but because I know it's out there, people are questioning their schedule, but okay. But you could only beat who's on your schedule, and some people think they're going to lose at some point, a couple games, and I think it's fair to say. But again,
sure.
Which ones do you think they're going to lose? Because it's based on what's happened with the Giants are smoke and mirrors, quite frankly.
Yep.
They're doing a great job. The coaching staff's doing a phenomenal job, but they just don't have a ton of talent. They had a bunch of guys hurt going into that Jacksonville game, which they somehow won, but that could have gone either way. They almost blew it at the end there. Oh my, that never should have happened. Barkley should have gotten out of bounds. Washington's challenge. I give them credit. The defense is playing better. But you look at this division here, and somehow the Giants are 6-1. Dallas is 5-2. Excellent defense. Who thought that this division would be like this?
Well, we did talk about it being better. Maybe not like this, although, again, I think you're making a good point that we're going to get into. I think the records maybe overstate how good the teams are. Dallas is good. They have a great defense. But Giants, I mean, the Giants sort of remind me of the Eagles last year, second half, just rolling. Although they're really good defensively, I'll give them that. They've probably beaten some teams that you wouldn't have thought, whereas last year the Eagles beat teams that were just bad. But the point is, it's sort of like the record makes it look better. But we've been saying that for weeks now, and they keep winning. So maybe I'm wrong, but I still see them as a mediocre to good team, not a good to great team by any stretch of the means. So, but I'll enjoy kind of getting the intel that you got on the Giants and the as we go around the division. Let's go back to the Eagles for a second. They're going to return to practice this week. I guess all eyes are really on Lane Johnson. I mean, that was the big injury going into the bye. He had the concussion. It's kind of a strange situation. Never really saw the play or where it was that how he got hit and suffered it. But they said he was doing well in the protocol. So I would hope that let's see, what will they do on Monday? Because they will bring the guys in today.
Today is Monday. So what happens is they usually have a light practice.
Right.
Teams do after the bye. It's rare that teams don't practice on the Monday after the bye. It's almost always they do, but it's late.
Right. And then they'll still get Tuesday off.
Yes, the practice week really doesn't start till Wednesday for a Sunday game. They play the Steelers on Sunday at home. So we'll see what comes of Lane here. Now the question would be, I guess it would be Driscoll. We know that because he was the one who replaced him in the last game.
Yes, I would think so. Right, but I would think that as long as everything's all right, Lane will be
right. Well, if he's not cleared,
right.
If he's not cleared, it'll be Driscoll for sure.
Do you think Sirianni goes? This will be really interesting. He went to the old Wednesday walkthrough pretty early in the season this year. That was something he did in the second half of last year, and he pulled it out kind of early. I think last week was the first week he did it, or maybe the second. I wonder if coming out of the bye, it's light workout Monday, Tuesday off, Wednesday walkthrough, and then I don't know. That'll be
it's a great point, because why do they need to have a walkthrough on Wednesday? Well, like Gunther told us on our Chalk Talk last week that, because you asked him, it was a great question. In fact, we went through with Steve Filippo, but how the practice works each day, during the week. And Paul said they generally would have a pre-practice walkthrough, then have a practice. So it's mostly common around the NFL. You have a pre-practice walkthrough on Wednesday for a Sunday game, and then you practice later in the day.
Right.
Because you have it in the morning, let's say at 9 or 10 a.m., and you practice, let's say at 12 or 1. So you would think that they would have a normal practice off the bye week. Why wouldn't they on Wednesday? But then again, it's whatever sports science tells them. But they didn't have. They're not coming off the game, so I understand why. For what the body tells you, let's not practice because your long practice is Thursday. That's the real practice. Friday's your light practice for an hour, and that's it. You walk through on Saturday. So we'll see what they do. But the fact of the matter is, they come in after the bye, physically really good. This gives Mailata a week off of that shoulder. It gives Maddox a week off of the ankle. The kicker Elliott was terrific, coming back from his right ankle injury, so you don't have to worry about that. That's really it. And Andre Dillard was actually he did technically play in the last game. Was active and did get in the game on probably special teams, I'm thinking. And that's it. They come in here pretty healthy when the Steelers come in this Sunday.
They do. And so that's why, to me, it's like, does it make sense to have your Wednesday walkthrough unless you're just doing it for routine, which coaches do. Sometimes they just stick to their routine. So we'll see what Nick Sirianni says, and then we'll see how Lane does. And nobody else was really of major concern injury standpoint. As you talk about the Eagles, and we look forward to them over this second half here, obviously the offensive line's health is something we've discussed, Adam. You'd like it to be a little less of the carousel that we've seen, but they have survived it. And that's been really a big part of why they're 6-0. That and the takeaways. It's funny. I said on a show recently, I thought that the number one reason that the Eagles were 6-0, of all the different reasons, number one was their turnover ratio. And then I watched a few national shows, and they said the same thing. Like, you could say a lot of great things about the Eagles, but the reason why they're undefeated is because they have been better than anybody else at not only taking the ball away, but securing the football. So
two turnovers, right?
Two turnovers. I think that trend is more sustainable. Their how careful they are with the football than the number of turnovers that they've produced. Two? I guess it's how many? They have 7 interceptions, and I forget that. I guess 5.
+2. There's +12, so they're so would mean they forced 14 turnovers.
14 turnovers in 6 games.
+12.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
That's not, to me, that's not sustainable. But I mean, I'm not dissing them. I'm just saying that's hard.
It's hard to right. It's hard to, like, are they really going to be at +34 for the season?
Right.
That's the point. It's highly, super highly unlikely. But the thing is, their secondary is so good, and they're like hornets to the ball. They are going. They're right on it. Their coverage, they have very sticky coverage. They're just really, really good. I mean, by the way, the opponent Sunday is super deep at receiver. They might get Calvin Austin back, their draftee from Memphis.
That's right.
Who's unfortunately was hurt. He hasn't played yet. He's been on IR. He started working. But they could spread you out. But the Eagles have such talent at the top of their cornerback group. They can match up against anyone. So I'm kind of, I don't want to say shocked. I didn't expect this kind of jump for the defense. This has been pretty remarkable. I don't care who they play. When you take away the ball like you're doing, that means your coverage is really good. You're disguising too. This is the big thing. Yep. With this defense, is that, and we've talked to a bunch of people about it, and they all see the same thing. Is, we haven't talked about this enough. We need to talk about this more. The Eagles are disguising, obviously, way more than last year when they barely were doing it because the DC didn't trust the players back, and then he was coaching enough. Now he is, and he's disguising well. The late movement is so good. You're seeing quarterbacks holding the ball, and they're struggling. The when they selectively blitz, are doing well. The stunts are doing well. There's not much to complain about right now. I don't. Quite frankly, I know people are getting mad at Gannon because he gets soft in the second half. Okay, I mean, it's somewhat true. I don't. It's fair, and they'll learn from that. But you see, Gannon comes from the school that we're not giving up plays over our head. Right. But it doesn't mean you can't play games up front, that you can't still disguise. See, I don't know. He's just, that's the one thing I wish he'd be better at it. Stop playing so passive in the second half. Why can't you get after the quarterback, or still get after the quarterback? What's wrong with that? Right. No, that's a good question. I want to go back and check for the next. I'm going to go back and look at the 85 Bears
and find out what their turnover ratio was.
Yeah, I'd love to know. And that they lost to Miami on a Monday night game. I remember watching it in school.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
just to see how, compare that to what the Eagles are doing, because I think you hit the number on the head. The Eagles are sort of on pace. If they kept this pace up, it would be about a plus 34
Yeah.
in the turnover department.
Come on.
Which it's like just saying that is hysterical. It's
Well,
amazing.
you know what though? They could be in the 20s because they're when you get they get you were talking about the pass rush rate
Yep.
with us in the last week. Their pass rush rate is very good. Like they don't get their sack numbers. See, they had the sack numbers a little skewed because they had 9-1 game.
Uh-huh.
But their pressure rate is very good because BG is looking great. Sweat's good.
Uh-huh.
Your D tackles get some pressure. Their blitzes get they don't maybe they don't get the sack, but they get pressure to make the quarterback get rid of the football. So
Mm-hmm.
and occasionally these forced turnovers. So the turnover number is going to be in the 20s. And plus Hurts is so good with the football; he's not turning it over.
Mm-hmm.
They'll get back to they're going to get back to the deep game. It's so obvious that they have to take more shots downfield. Why? Because they have the guys to do it.
Yes,
And they protect.
absolutely. We talked about that the last podcast. It'll be interesting to see if they can awaken Quez Watkins in this offense or get Miles Sanders. That to me is even more of a, I don't want to say easy, but something that you could probably add in and really become a even more diversified offense. Getting Miles Sanders involved in the passing game, getting him on those wheel routes. I mean, he's catching the ball this year for the first time, and that would be a nice little wrinkle you can add to the offense.
And Gainwell, as we talked about on the Self Scout show. Gainwell's way down, not carries, but way down in pass targets.
Right.
And receptions. He's almost to a game. So that's another Self Scout item we'd like to see. But for the Eagles, it all sets up very well. They play Pittsburgh, who's a young team. They play them this Sunday. Game obviously they'll be heavily favored. I haven't even looked at the number yet, but they'll be heavily favored. And then you look at the rest of the they played on a short week at Houston. Houston's really bad. They had an awful loss at the Raiders. Josh Jacobs it seemed like he had 500 yards in that game. Just ran all over. He's been unbelievable fantasy, by the way. Where people are trying to figure out, wait a minute, what are they doing with him? Why are they playing him? And like none of their starters in the preseason. It's very odd. Like they're showcasing him.
Yeah.
But he put the team on his back. Obviously, the Eagles run the ball well. Jacobs had 143 and three touchdowns against the Texans.
Right.
They called off the dogs late because they were crushing them. Jimmy White got in late. But the Eagles' schedule sets up so well. I mean, when could they possibly lose? I know we keep being asked this. We'll talk about this probably on the Fanatic tomorrow night. We're back there because the Sixers play tonight. But the Colts were so bad this past week. I don't know who the Colts are.
Mm-hmm.
I got to think by week 12, Rodgers gets it together. That to me would be the game where I would be worried if I happen to beat him.
Well, let's go inside the NFC East here, and let's talk about the Giants because they are 6-1, and they do have a good defense, very good defense. I do agree with you. I think some of what they're doing is a little bit kind of flukish, and if you want to use the word the term putting it together with gum and sticks, right? They always say we're just like MacGyvering it here because they've had a lot of injuries that they've had to overcome, and it's not always pretty. Gum and popsicle sticks, but they are 6-1, and their defensive personnel, they added to it. Obviously, they added Thibodeau. They added a couple of players in the offseason. They added Martindale, and this was a defense that already, he's great. And they added, but this is a defense that had given the Eagles problems last year already. They beat them once, and then even in the second game it was like 6-6 at the half before the floodgates went. And really, the Eagles had the Giants turned the ball over in that game and gave the Eagles half a field a couple of times in that game. And I think they got a defensive touchdown too from Singleton. But so my point is this the team that has the components to be able they can control the ball, they run? I mean, I know they're going to have I'll ask you. I mean, Evan Neal got hurt. He might be out for a while, huh?
Yeah, he's getting an MRI today. So he left. It was a right knee injury. They ruled him out basically immediately. He was carted off. So you're going to assume he's going to miss time.
Yeah.
So here's let's go inside this football team. We move to the next NFC East team.
Mm-hmm.
So the Giants, they're getting very little at the receiver position. Galladay hasn't played in a while. If his contract was palatable, they probably would have cut him already. But he's got a knee injury. He hasn't done anything. And unfortunately, Tony's got recurring hamstring problems, which have plagued him now since the preseason. He's barely played. Wan'Dale Robinson, the rookie second rounder, he was out of Kentucky. If I'm not mistaken. He looks really good.
He does look good.
He was kicking ass in the first half of that game, and he seemed to pull up with a groin injury. See if they list him. Jimenez didn't play. He has an injury. And then they put, I think Ojulari went on IR, one of their other outside linebacker pass rushers.
Who had a good year last year.
Yeah, he's really good, Azeez Ojulari. Jimenez didn't play in this. Yeah, Ojulari had a calf injury. He's almost missed the entire first 6 games, so they put him on IR. Jimenez didn't play with a quadriceps injury. Aaron Robinson, who would have been a starting corner, he went on IR with a knee injury. They didn't roll him out for the rest of the season, but they're coming back. Sterling Shepard was lost in the season due to torn ACL. You got to think he won't be playing again for the Giants. They're just as you're alluding to, they're just getting enough done. Mental toughness, phenomenal coaching staff. Daniel Jones is playing under control. You know what he's not doing? Turning it over. The dumb fumbles that he would have.
Right.
Where you just throw your hands up, dude, what are you doing?
Well, yeah, that, and he was also not getting hit left and right like he used to.
Yeah, right.
His protection's
That's part of
better.
it, right. Sure.
Yeah.
And they're designing a bunch of runs for him. He's very athletic, run well in a straight line. He's not turning it over. They're just doing enough, but their defense is carrying them. Their defense under Wink Martindale. I'm talking to someone of the Giants about it. What Wink does unbelievably well. Better probably than any D coordinator in the National Football League. The first thing he wants to do is break down your protection. It's the most important thing to him. Nothing else matters to him. And we play our coverage like we play it. And he's not a high blitz percentage guy, but he only blitzes to break down your protection. Because once he does, you're at the mercy. Your quarterback is at the mercy of his front.
Right.
And you better be ready, man. And it was, again, they've had some injuries, but it doesn't seem to matter. And boy, Doug Peterson's offense, although ETN played really well, they confused Lawrence. It wasn't like he turned it over a lot, but the Jaguars, who start off the season 2-1, I think they've now lost 4 in a row. They're struggling.
Right.
They're kind of like what people thought they'd be, like a 6 or 7 win team. That's probably the way they'll finish. But the Giants right now are doing it. Barkley, boy, the Jaguars' run defense was phenomenal in that game. They did a great job against Barkley until late, because they were grinding out carries to run the game out. They did a really good job against them. But I give the Giants credit for being mentally tough. But what happened was Barkley unfortunately went out of bounds, and there was sort of like a debate whether he really did. So he went out of bounds, and somehow the Jaguars got the ball back with no timeouts, less than a minute left. And it went down the last play of the game, and Christian Kirk got to like the quarter-foot line, almost broke the play, and he just somehow the defender stopped him. That would have been a terrible loss, like an awful loss. But
right.
That was that, and I'll tell you
but
what.
That's sort of like the way the Giants have won all year long, going back to when they beat Tennessee, right? In week 2 or 3 or something like that.
The week 1, yes.
Is that week 1? Geez, the comeback win. Okay,
20.
Wow. Yeah. So that they've sort of survived. That they're used to living on the edge. This is like team survived by the skin of its teeth.
Well, and they don't throw it very well, but Jones has been efficient. The key to that game is they stymied Barkley, but then he started breaking off big runs late. He went over for 100 yards. Daniel Jones went over 100 yards, folks. That can't happen. So I know Mike Colwell's not doing a bad job as D coordinator for the Jaguars, but you can't have that happen. And now Jaguars are 2-5. Their season's spiraling out of control. And as we finish the Giants off here, it's going to be fascinating because Darius Slayton, who they tried to trade, he's having to play because they don't have anyone else. My guy, Chris Meyer, went to my high school, Cheltenham.
Yes.
He's blocking. He's doing a great job as a blocking tight end. David Sills, he's playing. Who no one want to give him a chance. And
from Delaware.
Is he from Delaware, David Sills?
He is from Delaware.
Okay. Oh, that's right. You told that story. That's right.
Yep.
What was his?
14 years old, he committed to USC to play quarterback. So he never went to USC. He never played quarterback.
Was that
Kiffin? What's that?
Did Kiffin recruit him to USC?
Yes, Lane Kiffin was there. Right?
Yeah. I always think of Monty, his dad. Oh, then Daniel Bellinger, unfortunately, had a bad eye injury.
Oh.
He was carted off. Because they showed him with his helmet off. I'm not going to speculate. I just hope he's going to be fine. I don't know that. So we'll see. But and he's been a nice story of development because they're down on available pass targets. So He's been he scored a bunch of touchdowns, but overall they're offensively challenged. But as you said, they're finding ways to win, and they're so mentally tough. Coaching could really take you far, and this is proving it here with this Giants.
Totally. Well, no, but I think you and I were both in agreement with them, with the idea that maybe the best addition this team had in the offseason was not personnel, but was coaching staff, from Mike Kafka to Brian Dable to Wink Martindale. So that's a good try. They hit the trifecta with coaching there, and looks like Joe Shane's done what he can to try to bring in some talent. This coming off season will be big for them. And
Huge.
so let's finish off the Giants with this question.
Yeah.
I don't like to be this guy because I never think that there's a downside to winning, but are they fooling themselves a little bit? I mean, I think that the front office and the coaching staff is smart enough to know what it's got.
They know who they are. Trust me.
But not a lot of teams move on from a quarterback when they go to the playoffs. So if this team, which can very easily now make the playoffs because the NFC is not that good, and lose, almost like if they're like the Eagles last year, you make the playoffs, you lose in the first round, you don't have maybe the top 5, 10 pick because you do well. Are they hurting themselves by winning this much? I mean,
but hang on. See, with the fifth, okay, we know they declined his fifth-year option, but they have his rights till the start of free agency.
Sure.
So if they win 2 playoff games, he's coming back as the starter.
No, I said, what if they lose though the first playoff game?
But it's going to come down to how he plays.
Yeah, and let's say he doesn't play well.
Then they probably would walk. But again, see, now that it's only on paper, the playoffs now looks like it could be 6 to 8 deep with quarterbacks going the first 3 rounds.
That's a good point.
So maybe I don't know what their draft pick group is, but
they may still have a couple of. I know they don't have an extra first from that trade they made with the Bears, but they still may have a couple of lingering. Like, do they have a second or an extra third that they picked up that they maybe can package if they want to move up a little bit? I mean, they can always just give up a future one if they're confident anyway. But I thought that they've had some compensation still around from that trade that they made with the Bears, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Same one that the Eagles were offered and they turned it down. They wanted to get Smith, but in the end here, this team is overachieved significantly. I could tell you they know who they are. They know that they're winning dangerously, but they're loving it because it's kind of house money. No one expected this. We'd said when we previewed the NFC East with Cosell, remember I called you. I said they're going to be much better than people think.
Yes,
I didn't expect this. This is ridiculous. 6-1.
No, 6-1 is kind of crazy.
I feel like 4-3. I would be like, hey, see. And I took, I bet maybe $50 on the over-unders. I took the Giants over. I took the Eagles over. I took the Panthers over. Took Denver over, miss. But I think I'm going to go 4-2. Oh, yeah, I got the Jets over 5.5.
Nice.
But man, I don't regret that Panther one because
their D look good. I mean,
they're great.
Good,
it's just
everything else stinks.
Yeah, if you don't have a quarterback, you cannot win. You cannot win.
No, I totally agree.
Gotta have a quarterback.
All right, let us move away from the Giants. We'll go to the Cowboys up next at 5-2. I mean, this team did an excellent job of surviving when everybody wrote them off when Dak Prescott went out for 5 weeks there. They went 4-1. The only loss, of course, to the Eagles. Cooper Rush held down. Then they came back with Dak and beat the snot out of a Lions team that, man, not that we're going to talk about the Lions, but you kind of hoped in year 2 with Dan Campbell and Hard Knocks, and they had a good season. The game against the Eagles was competitive, and you thought, all right, the Lions, they'll probably still not be great, but at least they'll be more competitive. But then you kind of look and, they're losing week by week still. They're still kind of the Lions,
Yeah, and they turn it over 5 times.
Yeah.
They could have taken the lead in the second half with Jamal Williams, fumbles at the 1.
Yeah.
And they showed Dan Campbell, and this has been the story. Like, beat themselves, and he was stomping, and you can see how pissed off he was. It was embarrassing. He felt bad for the guy. You want to give him a hug. Like, you felt so bad. Like, dude, it's okay.
You're gonna be okay.
But the Cowboys defense beat the bleep out of him. It was bad. Goff started playing like he did when he struggled with the Rams.
Yeah.
Not seeing the rush. When you're struggling, don't let the stats show. Like, he was 21-26. He didn't play well. He missed throws. He took a lot of easy dump-off passes. He missed guys that are wide open. Then their line got housed in the second half. But Dallas's defense is so good. But the key is the Eagles have the best offensive line of football.
Right.
You saw it in that Monday night game. They completely dominated Dallas's offensive line, and they're the only team that can really do it. This is what makes the Eagles so great. Is they're the only NFL team. You and I have talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
They could win. Do they want to be a running team this week? Okay, we'll throw it, but we're gonna get the lead. We're gonna run the hell out of it.
Right.
Most games they're throwing it more than they're running in the first half, except for one game. I think it was a game because they got a big lead, but I've not seen anything like this in a long time. I don't know if the 17 team was able to do it like that, but this team is just remarkable in what they're doing. In Dallas, you know what? They're running the ball. Their running game is really improving. Like Zeke all of a sudden has shown he's got a new lease on life.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, I was troubled with the way Prescott threw the football. He looked like a guy. Again, you have to watch the game. The stats do not show the way he played.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't taking it down. Maybe his hand hurt him, his right hand.
Yeah, that was surprising, right? Because you knew the Lions were going to come after him with all these blitzes, and that was going to set up a lot of one-on-ones, but they didn't.
The first half, they weren't bringing it like they usually do.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the one thing Cosell was telling me, that they can't play this way, trying to blitz on every down. Every team knows what they're doing. The blitzes aren't working, so they have to try something else. And it seemed that because they were playing a lot of coverage, and it was Dak was checking it down, like, wow, they're not going to win this game, but they're hanging in there.
Mm-hmm.
If they didn't turn the ball over left and right, maybe they would have pushed them to the end. But they're not. Their passing game is not great.
Mm-hmm.
The run game's good. The defense is good. You clearly see the division of labor in this division.
Yeah, I think the big thing with them, Adam, is that Gallup isn't Gallup yet. He has
another one.
The vertical element to that, and we know that CeeDee Lamb's a good receiver, but he's not the guy you line up on the outside and ask to win 20 to 30 yards downfield consistently. Yak yards. He's perfect slot. He's good at what he does. They really miss that over the top element, or just that freak of nature that they have with Amari Cooper, who let them down in many situations, but nonetheless, you needed to account for him when he was on the field. Gallup, I don't think Dallas has that kind of guy right now.
No, Gallup would have been that guy. Maybe it'd be year two, but he's not. He's just not there. They tried a shot play.
Right.
They missed to him in the end zone, but overall, they're good. Dallas has a very similar schedule to the Eagles. Yes. The only thing is that they had to play Tampa Bay in week 1, but they got to play Chicago, who's not very good. They got to play Green Bay. They got to play the Vikings, Houston, Colts, Jags, of course, and the Titans and Washington. Yeah, it's almost mirror image of each other, except also the Eagles didn't have to play the Rams, but the Rams are struggling. Another team. It's just talk about a complete turnaround to this NFC. I mean, that's the other thing. It's not anywhere it's not quite what people thought it would be for good and bad.
Right. I don't think Dallas is going to win 7 in a row before they play the Eagles again the night before Christmas, but Packers, Vikings, they might lose one of those two. Giants, I guess, will be tough. But Colts, Texans, Jags leading up to the Eagles, I think Dallas will be on a hot streak when they come into that clash at the second half. That's that clash in Dallas against the Eagles.
Oh, and and one other thing we should mention, it's going to happen because assuming the Eagles are as good as they are now or close to it, they're going to get some games flexed in December. Like it's impossible to know which week, and I know that networks will block each other, but when you're elite like this, you're gonna. And the Eagles have a strong national following. I know from talking to the league about it.
Aren't you only allowed to play 5 games on prime time though?
But you could flex. But no, I'm talking about flexing from 1 to 4 o'clock.
Oh yeah. That Giants game, December 11th, that wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, because if you so if you look at, I don't know, I'm kind of surprised they have so many 1 o'clock games in December. So the Giants game on 11th absolutely could be.
Yep.
It's
probably about
I'll be honest with you, they will do it. Even if the team stinks who they're playing,
if it's significant, right?
Well, if the Eagles are undefeated by then, or it's got a first. Let's say the Dallas hangs in there,
right? If there's meaning to something,
right?
Yeah, like that January 1st game you're talking about against the Saints. That could be a game that gets flexed.
Well, I mean, anything for the Saints, but for the division or another team for wild card or something, sure.
Right.
Yeah. So that's where Fox. I mentioned Fox, one of the networks, they can block them from moving to 1 to 4 o'clock, whatever they want to do. And that damn cross flex, I'm still trying to get used to it. So the Detroit Dallas game, which should have been on Fox, Now, I'm not sure if it had to do with the Phillies game being on Fox. I think was the Phillies game on Fox on Sunday? Was it on
Fox
FS1?
Sports, right? Yeah, FS1.
Okay, FS1. Okay, but that one was on CBS. Stupid crossflex. That's what they call it.
Right.
When they take it, they tape
Yeah,
a
that annoys me too. Right.
Yeah, kind of because I can't get used to it because growing up, everything was the same for
Right.
30, 40 years. Okay, NBC will be the West Coast game when Channel 3 in Philly was actually NBC, where they switched to the, like, I think 94, they switched affiliates. So Channel 10 became NBC
Right.
instead of CBS.
Right.
So it gets confusing anyway for those of you not in Philly. That's what happened. But we'll see what happens with the schedule going forward. But Dallas, they've won 5 out of 6. They rebounded well. You could say against an awful Detroit team. They can't get out of their own way. It is amazing when you're bad. Like when the Eagles were bad in 2020, you can't get out of your own way. You do a bunch of bad things.
Mm-hmm.
The turnovers. See, it's so fixable. Like coaches have to understand when your quarterback's struggling. I get that DeAndre Swift didn't play. He's another guy can't stay healthy. Figure something out. They have a lot of talent on offense. Amon-Ra St. Brown unfortunately got a concussion early in the game. Obviously can't return.
Right.
But they couldn't figure out anything out there. And Goff started turning it over, and they just struggled. And then you look at Dallas. I was not impressed with their offense at all. They ran it well, but the pass game was boxed in.
Right.
And Dak was not comfortable. So I'm curious to see how Dak looks going forward here. But that's pretty much it for Dallas.
Same here. All right, we'll move on to the Commanders. Got a big win over the Packers. Before we talk about them, I want to remind everybody to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with all their coverage of Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto, so make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com, on Twitter at phlsportsnation. We'll pause real quick here for a word from our great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. And if you head out to Westchester, PA and hop into Sky Motor Cars, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You'll get a great deal. If you can't make it in, make sure you visit them at skymotorcars.com.
And they're buying cars. I'm telling you, it's the best time in our lifetime. You sell cars. You'll never get more for your car than you will now. And Sky is incredible to deal with. If you go to any car review website, dealership website, the strongest reviews I've ever seen. It's remarkable.
Yes, agreed. All right, we will go now into the Commanders. Now, I don't know why this happens for the last 3 or 4 years, Adam. It always seems like it takes Washington 2 months to figure crap out. I mean, and I'm not trying to say that they're great now that they won 2 in a row. I mean, they beat the Bears in a hideously ugly game that was only, if not for the game the week before, which I think was that Colts-Broncos game that was even more hideous, then that would have probably stood out as the most hideous game you'll ever see in your life. But nonetheless, they won that game. And then they come out, of course, with no Carson Wentz and Tyler Heineke, and they beat the Green Bay Packers 23-21. And what I think that they figured out is, and again, it's sort of like, why does this, take that much time? But just because you want to get Brian Robinson involved in your running game and make him your feature back doesn't mean you have to completely take Antonio Gibson off the field. He's still a player who can do things for you offensively. Oh. I think that they were struggling with that early on and seemed to maybe figure that part of it out against Green Bay there, Adam.
Yeah, so let's go inside the Commanders. So a couple of things in this past game. We'll go to the Green Bay game, and we'll give you an overview.
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely figured out with Gibson. He had an incredible touchdown catch in the back of the end zone. I couldn't believe it's one of these, on Verizon Fios, you can get slow motion. I replayed it 5 times. Like, got his feet in. Wow. Taylor Heineke made a great throw. That's Scott Turner's guy who was had it with 3 teams here.
Yeah.
Heineke, my friend John Hanson calls him hospital ball Heineke.
Mm-hmm. He does.
He had a couple of them. With that.
He does throw it up there.
He does. He did it over the middle. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're throwing a blind pass. Right over the middle, almost got McLaurin knocked out, but McLaurin had a touchdown. They're down. Jahan Dotson, who's terrific, who scored in, I think, 3 of his 4 games before he got hurt, 2 or 3 of them.
Right.
He unfortunately had a hamstring. He was close. Then he got hurt in Friday's practice or Thursday's practice. Didn't practice Friday, I think, and didn't wind up playing. So they're close to getting him back. Robinson is shown like he's coming back from. They got a good 1-2 punch now. Their offensive line still is a problem. You saw when the Eagles housed them, it's because their line is they have one of the worst offensive lines in football. But their defense is really getting better under Jack Del Rio. They're looking to move William Jackson, one of their starting corners. Cosell told us that he's strictly a man corner, not zone. They're playing a lot of zone this season to help their corners out because they don't have a great pass rush.
Yeah.
Chase Young out, but they're figuring out they're getting a better pass rush than they were earlier this season. They're playing with better discipline. Jamin Davis is playing better. So they're figuring out ways to win. As you said, they won their last 2 games. Their offense was better this game.
Yeah.
Way better than the Chicago game. But Chicago's defense isn't bad. It's Justin Fields who's been horrendous. But
right. Well, that's the thing. I don't know if Washington's defense is that much improved or if they just played 2 really awful offenses. But I'm sure I think Cam Crow coming back really helped them. I think that was a big part of it. One of the best safeties in the division, and they missed.
Yep.
So things are coming together at the right time. I mean, they started to play a little bit better defensively. You mentioned Davis. Curl comes back. Then they play a couple of teams that aren't very good offensively. I think that the changeover a little bit with Tyler Heineke, at least Taylor Heineke. Sorry, I say Tyler. Taylor Heineke. They probably controlled the ball a little bit longer in that Packers game because they were able to get a good running game going. Yeah, they ran it well. Yeah. So I mean, it almost probably forced them to get that kind of a style of game going with Carson out, and I think that benefited their defense as well. So we'll see if that continues. I forget who they have up next. Do you have their schedule in front of you?
Yeah, I do. Okay. So Washington has won two games in a row. They play the Colts at Indy.
Yeah,
where the Colts, who the hell knows what you're getting out of them? They're like a box of chocolates.
It's kind of like a mirror images type game right there, man.
It's true because both teams are not playing great, but Washington at least has won 2 in a row. The Colts, who had an amazing comeback against the Jags the week before, when Matt Ryan threw the ball 37 times in the first half, which is absurd.
Right.
Frank Reich can't figure out what their identity is on offense. So they play the Vikings, then they play the Eagles.
Yeah.
Here in Philly, and they play the Texans. But yeah, Washington's not making the playoffs, but I'll give them credit. They're playing hard. They're under such stress because of the owner. By the way, how about Jim Irsay going on record speaking out against Snyder? It's the first time any active owner's done it. Shocking.
No, I was blown away by it.
As many were. It was one of those. I cannot believe it.
And that's coming from Jimmy Irsay, who at very few people are blown away by what he comes out and says publicly. But that I was
wacky. Yeah.
I was really
Jim Irsay. Do you know Jim Irsay was their GM in the late 80s?
I remember that. I do know that. Yeah.
He had all sorts of personal issues. He was a bodybuilder, a weightlifter.
Yeah. His dad was the owner of the team, right? Bob was owner of the team.
Yeah, he's the one who moved him from Baltimore to Indy. Unfortunately, in the May
in the middle of the night.
Yeah, exactly. Through the snow, but overall, Washington's a little bit more competitive. They're not going to give the Eagles there's certain things they can do, but overall, they're like 10 or 14 points away from the Eagles. That's kind of You saw the first matchup when the Eagles housed them.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of those where it seemed like it was way worse than 16 points. What was it? Yeah, 24-8. Sure, right. Seemed like it was worse than that, but they'll wind up with 7 or 8 wins, which is I think their win total was 7 or 7.5 at FanDuel, one of the casinos. But they're kind of who we thought they were. I thought you set it up right with they're finding ways to get both running backs going. The offensive line has played better lately. They're still a bottom 10, bottom 5 offensive line.
Yeah, they're not. They're not. The only thing that I think could maybe make them scary is if Chase Young finally comes back and he's like just on another level.
Oh, he's close. Yeah, he's close. Yeah, apparently Ron Rivera said he's pretty close.
Yeah, but that's not going to help their offense out much. Now, when's Carson's first game eligible?
They don't know. He was put on IR on Saturday, so he's got to miss at least 4. He'll miss at least 4 games. It's a broken finger.
Yeah,
those are closer to 6 than 4 weeks.
Of course.
So
he's not going to play against the Eagles again. So
no, he won't. So, and Taylor Heineke, the Eagles know very, very well. He's scattershot, but when he gets those, I call those Betty Davis eyes going, man. His eyes are like, Mark Zumoff says he's got the high beams on. He gets in a rhythm. He gets real excited and he starts throwing it. He's pretty athletic. Remember 2 years ago, people forget when the Bucs won the Super Bowl, he almost came off the couch and beat him in the wild card game. Remember?
Right.
You
Now
never
you
know.
said they're not going to make the playoffs, and I would agree with you theoretically. But the weird thing is, at 3-4, they are so in the wild
Oh,
card
for
race.
now
I
they
mean,
are. Oh yeah.
yeah.
The
Yeah,
Rams are
but
only
that's
three
what
and
I'm saying.
three.
If they win a couple of games here, and again, their schedule isn't all that difficult either. They're playing a lot of softies too, and they start to get their act together. They could make the playoffs with 7 wins theoretically,
Well,
depending on
here's the thing.
how the
Right.
rest goes.
The Niners are 3-4. They got housed by the Chiefs, annihilated and embarrassed them.
Yeah,
The Niners are pretty resilient. I expect them to be there. They'll if they don't win the division. By the way, Seattle's 4-3, win the division.
right.
They only had an over/under total of 5.
I know, it's amazing.
Unbelievable. Give
Pete Carroll,
John
a lot of credit.
Schneider
And Geno. Yeah, yeah.
Geno Smith has been
All of them.
it's Geno Smith is like not only is he the most improved player. If they make the playoffs, folks, he's going to be in the running for the MVP. This is Geno Smith. True. I'm telling you. Cosell defended him. I guess he didn't have a touchdown pass against Arizona. He goes, people aren't watching the tape, have no idea. He said he threw the ball really well. Arizona's been very stingy this year.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, this is the NFL, the way the 22 season is. Expect the unexpected. Right when you think you've got a beat on the team. I think we pretty much, as you said, we know who Kansas City and Buffalo is. The Eagles are.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota's a fraudulent 5-1. They're nowhere near as good as the record. When the Eagles embarrass them.
Definitely. That's a weak division right there. Amazingly, very weak division. All right, so we will move past Washington now. That was a really good look at what's coming up in the NFC. I thought that was very, very meaty. So people should have a really good and informed idea of what this division looks like going forward. We mentioned some of the other NFC teams, Adam. The crazy thing is, and I think you and I are both in agreement, that every week we keep saying Tampa and Green Bay are going to turn this thing around. It's going to like click for them at some point, and then they're going to look unstoppable. Well, not unstoppable, but they're going to look like, championship contenders. And at this point, I'm like, are they? Is Tampa Bay going to get I don't know, because it's just not happening. And then I don't see any sign of it.
I can't defend them because it's funny. So I do this interview on Fox Sports Radio every Saturday and Sunday. I keep defending the Bucks because I know that was with Belichick. When the Patriots would get off the slow starts, people trying to bury the Patriots and they'd always come back.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the problem: no Gronk, and that is major. They're getting nothing from their tight ends. Unfortunately, Cameron Brate's hurt.
Right.
The line lost 4 guys from last season. It's a problem. Chris Godwin's not what he was before the ACL injury. Julio Jones hasn't played since like week 2.
Right.
And the defense has got they got 4 or 5 guys hurt now. And it was crazy to see Brady threw the ball 48 or 49 times and didn't throw a touchdown pass. When does that ever happen?
Very well. I mean, he should have thrown one, but apparently Mike Evans forgot how to catch football.
Oh, you saw that? Oh my! I mean, he I think it was Dante Jackson. He ran right through him. If you're watching us on YouTube, he had it, and I don't know why he fought the ball. It was just so weird. He's not like that usually. Really?
You know why? You know why he did it? Because he's on my fantasy team, Adam.
I have him in one league.
By the way, I forgot to mention when I said my starting quarterback was Trey Lance, my backup was Jameis Winston, my top 2 receivers, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans. Forgot to mention that my best player was supposed to be Javonte Williams. So he was also out for the year. I literally have the curse of curses on my fantasy football.
It takes the sales out of it takes the win out of your sales for fantasy. When you lose, I knew I was super high on Breece Hall. He was one of my breakout players, and he was available. He was available in some leagues in the 5th round. I was like, what the hell? Is there something wrong I don't know about? Anyway, so I drafted him a bunch of leagues, and then they think he tore his ACL, which sucks.
Man, that's rough. I agree with you, though, as you look at the NFC landscape, even if Green Bay and Tampa don't really turn it around, I think the one team that you look at that, all right, there's 2 teams that have a losing record that you probably thought were going to be better, right? One being the 49ers and the other being the Saints. I didn't think, I wasn't sure if the Saints were going to be really good, but I thought with their defense and with the work they put in on the O-line and D-line that they would be a way better than 2-5. And that's another team where it just doesn't look like they have an identity. They're on different quarterbacks in and out. Taysom Hill is having a good game one day, then absent the next. I mean, I don't know who they are or what they are.
Defensively, they're horrible.
I thought they were going to be good too. Yeah,
I know. Yeah. Dennis Allen being the head coach, they have no identity. You set it up very well. And when you look at this NFC, 49ers got embarrassed at home. Okay. We talk about the Packers and Bucks. They on offense. The Packers have a ton of talent on defense. They're not playing up to their talent level under Joe Barry. And then you got the Niners.
Mm-hmm.
Christian McCaffrey played a ton in the first half. But their defense just got housed. Mahomes made so many off-schedule plays. Shanahan was talking about after the game.
Yeah.
They just couldn't handle it. And D'Amico Ryans is phenomenal, by the way. There's people are going to kill him over that game, but it's what can you do?
Yeah, you lose to Patrick Mahomes. That happens, and it's not like they're a bad defense. That was just a bad game.
Yeah. So, and then the shock that I don't know what's more surprising. You tell me. Seahawks or the Giants this season?
That's a really good question. I guess the Giants, because the Chargers have been a mess. I thought they were going to be one of the best teams. I thought they were going to the Super Bowl. What's that?
They're 4. I think they're 4-3. The Chargers.
Yeah, but you've watched them. They're not that good. They've been very, very disappointing. Their head coach does not understand time management. He doesn't understand clock, which is the review and like when to use a flag and not, which is surprising because he's considered one of the brightest guys in the NFL. He struggles there. I don't know. There's just something missing with that Chargers team. And I thought they were going to the Super Bowl. So maybe there's a little bias for me in here. I'm wondering how they could be, 4-3. And some of their wins aren't that impressive. So I would say the Giants,
I'll die if the Seahawks win the division in the NFC West.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just throw my hands up like nobody knows anything anymore because it's so hard. It's funny. My friends who bet college football, they think it's easy because the disparity between the best teams and the not so good teams, it's so large.
Mm-hmm.
Even anyone's capable of beating anyone. And the other thing is, like, Baltimore did beat the Browns. They almost blew that game late again. That's the problem. Is like Atlanta had the Rams were up. I don't know, like 24 points in a game earlier this season. They wound up not covering. Atlanta came back. That's the problem here with teams playing soft defense. They just don't make. That's why games are down in scoring because they're like, you're not throwing over heads. We've got a big lead. Just take it easy. Do whatever you want. You're not going to get over heads.
Yeah,
and that's what's happening.
No doubt about it. All right, so that's going to do it for this podcast. We will have obviously a lot of news and notes coming from the early days of practice on our Wednesday podcast, and on our Friday podcast, we will do what we normally do, and that's preview the Eagles' next game. They'll be playing the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Link, so that'll be a fun one. We may have even some notes on early look ahead for the Wednesday pod on that. But that will do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Big thanks to our producer, Tyler Strasser. Does a great job. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.